James Wan, Thief. If you're like me and you're into horror movies, you've probably seen the movie Saw. Written and directed by this man here, James Wan. He's also directed other movies, such as Insidious, The Conjuring, and Dead Silence. Another thing you might know is that James Wan is really into dolls. But what you might not know is that James Wan has a darker side. He stole a story that I wrote in 2005 about an old woman ghost, changed the ghost children into puppet children, made it into a motion picture, and took the credit for writing the story. I wrote a ghost story titled Pale.
I wrote a ghost story in 2005, and I'm trying to say that James Wan, writer of Saw, director of The Conjuring, and Insidious, stole my story and made the movie Dead Silence.
In 2005, I wrote the first story ever about a murderous old woman ghost being the main character. I knew I couldn't own an idea, so I added a bunch of new ideas to the story, gave the old woman ghost a past and a present, and added scenes and characters that have never been done before. After I secured the story by copywriting it, I sent it off to over 100 publishing houses in 2005. 2 years later, I could not believe what I was seeing. Could this be true? Could James Wan, writer of Saw, steal my manuscript, slightly alter it, and make the motion picture Dead Silence? I will attempt to prove to you that James Wan has stolen my story to make the motion picture Dead Silence. The copyright law is very clear. You cannot take someone's brand new story and slightly alter a list of brand new ideas, characters, and scenes. When Dead Silence was released, it was promoted as a brand new story never done before. There's a list of new ideas in my story, and I will prove that James Wan has slightly changed this list and kept my characters and scenes. First, let's take a moment to view my characters, and I will show you the characters in the movie and how James Wan slightly altered them. I will place my characters on the left like this, and James Wan's on the right. Let's begin. Afterwards, I'll take you scene to scene. Okay, before we go any further, it's important to remember that until I wrote the story Pale, there had never been a ghost story where an old woman ghost was the main character, killing off a small town. When a big movie maker decides to steal a story, they're not going to keep the story exactly the same. Of course, they want to get credit for the story, so what they want is the story, but they want to get credit for the story, so what they do is they slightly change the story so the story still appears to be the same story, but then they're able to say, oh no, it's just a coincidence. So what we have to do is we have to look at the law. The law says you cannot take a brand new story never done before and slightly alter it. So now you're going to be the judge and decide if there's too many coincidences for James Wan to plead that he created Dead Silence on his own. Remember, their own admission, they promoted the movie as a brand new story never done before. Okay, now you're the judge and you decide if there's too many coincidences. Now before I go into detail about the characters, scenes, and story, there's one hurdle that we have to get over first. Afterwards, I will show you how he changed my hand theme and made it into a tongue theme, a pianist into a ventriloquist, and by doing so he was able to keep everything else and it became automatically slightly altered. But first, I'll have to show you that James Wan also has the same theme involving an old woman with children and a baby. So my story is about an old woman ghost, her baby, and ghost children. And 2 years later, James Wan comes out with a story about an old woman ghost, her puppet baby, and puppet children. Watch how the movie makes a reference to Billy the doll being a baby.
Oh, Jane, you adopted us a baby.
A baby? Honey, have you seen this thing?
Oh, yes, you're the best mother I could ever hope for.
Now watch how the movie makes a reference to the dolls being children.
In her will, Mary stated that her dummies were to be buried with her. Her children, as she called them. Her children, as she called them. All 101 of them.
An old woman goes with her children and her puppet baby. Okay, now that we established that both ghost stories have a theme of an old woman with children and a baby in the woods in a small town, there's something else I want to point out. Then I'll take you through the story, the flashback scene, the present, and to the shockful ending. The James Wan story. Pale, written in 2005. Dead Silence, written in 2006. First we'll look at Pale and then Dead Silence. In the wooded town of Desselton, there's an old woman ghost who chokes people when they're scared. Every time she attacks, there's a supernatural darkness. Now Dead Silence. In the wooded town of Ravensfair, there's an old woman ghost who cuts out people's tongues when they scream. Every time she attacks, there's a supernatural silence. Susan Pale was an old woman ghost who roams the woods with 10 children. At the end of the story, you find out that Susan Pale is really the children. Mary Shaw is an old woman ghost who roams the woods with 100 puppet children. At the end of the story, you find out that Mary Shaw is really the puppet children. Now I'll take you through both stories, and we'll start at the flashback scene before the old women were ghosts. Important note. The flashback scene in both stories, this is very important. And by the way, this scene has never been done before in any story out there, or movie. On the surface of this story so far, you have an old woman ghost who chokes people when they're scared in the movie, an old woman ghost who cuts out people's tongues when they scream, and the flashback scene is going to show you that it's the same character. My old woman ghost has his hand theme going through her story, and what James Wan did was change the hand theme into a tongue theme. Watch this. My story, you have an old woman, Henry Witz, a little boy, and discussion about a baby. In the movie, you have an old woman, Henry Walker, a little boy, and a puppet baby. And in both stories, you have an audience in the background, so there you go.
Let's go!
80 years ago, Susan Pale was an old woman pianist who lost her hands trying to save her baby from a town fire. 60 years ago, Mary Shaw was an old woman ventriloquist who lost her voice while trying to make her puppet baby appear alive. Let's really examine the flashback scene. We'll start with Susan Pale, and then we'll go on to Mary Shaw. Now when you're watching these two comparisons, notice how James Wan took the hand theme in mind and altered it into a tongue theme in the movie. And the entire story unfolds with these two themes. 80 years ago, in the small wooded town of Desselton, Susan Pale was an old woman pianist that lost her hands trying to save her baby's life. One day while she's in town, Henry Witz notices that she had got her hands back supernaturally. A little boy makes fun of the old woman, accusing her of killing her baby, where she had lost her hands but got her hands back. Soon after, she kidnaps the little boy, puts him in a secret room below her bedroom window out in the woods, and she makes him eat a pair of hands. Mary Shaw was an old woman ventriloquist that lost her voice trying to make her puppet baby appear alive. A little boy accuses the old woman of not making her puppet baby appear alive, so she begins to supernaturally speak in two voices at the same time. Henry Walker is in the audience and he cannot believe what he heard. Soon after, the old woman kidnaps the little boy, puts him in a secret room in her bedroom wall. She cuts out his tongue and makes him drink milk. Did you see that? A little boy putting a guilt trip on an old woman about the loss of her baby. And then the old woman comes back and kidnaps the little boy and puts him in a secret room in her bedroom in the woods. This scene has a flurry of new ideas and it's a brand new scene. And besides what I've already shown you, is this just another coincidence that's found inside the Dead Silence movie? If somebody steals your story, they're not going to keep the story the same. Of course not. You have the certificate. You can sue them. They're going to slightly alter the story so they can still get credit for creating the story, get paid for the story, and then just say that everything is a coincidence. Unless you have a lot of new ideas. Let me give you an example of what I mean. You remember 1980s Freddy Krueger? Okay, Freddy Krueger is a fine example. It was a brand new story about this man that haunts your dreams, and if you die in your dreams, you die in your real life. Well, you can't own that idea, so someone else could have used a regular man that came into your nightmares and killed you in your dream and you died in real life. Even a bunch of creepy children, even an old woman ghost. But if they were to change his hat into a cap and change his red stripes into red polka dots, that is a copyright infringement. So let's make it simple. After the old woman ghost kills off the parents in mind, the wife in the movie, the main hero becomes a suspect in a murder the old woman ghost committed by a detective. Both men have light brown hair, brown beady eyes, and are white males in their 20s. Both heroes end up in a stakeout in the woods with the detectives looking for the old woman ghost. Later on, the hero is getting chased at the river in my story, the lake in the movie. The old woman ghost pulls him into the river in my story, pushes him into the lake in the movie. Now my character dies here. A new family enters the equation, the Brooks family.
James Wan.
Now he took these characters out of the story, but gave all their important scenes to Jamie Ashen, who resembles Calvin Koenig's. Light brown hair, brown beady eyes, in their 20s, suspect in a murder for a crime the old woman ghost committed. Sarah goes to Henry's, gets warned about the old woman ghost. Jamie goes to Henry's, gets warned about the old woman ghost. Both Henrys were in the flashback scene when the boy made fun of the old woman and her baby / puppet baby, and the old woman kidnapped the boy and put him in a secret room under her bedroom window in mine and in the bedroom wall in the movie. Then you got the old woman ghost pretending to be a little boy in mine, Henry in the movie, and she leads the second main character into the secret room where she kept the kidnapped boy. And the second main character gets ambushed by the children / puppet children, who's really the old woman ghost, and their faces stretch. At the end, the main character is getting away, knows not to be scared in my story, knows not to scream in the movie. So in Pale, the old woman ghost pretends to be Sarah's children, and in Dead Silence, the old woman ghost pretends to be Jamie's father. And in my story, Sarah gets scared when she finds out it's really the old woman ghost. And in the movie, Jamie screams when he finds out it's really the old woman ghost. And in my story, this enables the old woman ghost to choke Sarah And in the movie, this enables the old woman ghost to cut out Jamie's tongue.